I'm Jim Rimbach, president of CX Global Media and host of the Customer Service Weekly podcast powered by PACE, the official podcast of National Customer Service Week, where our purpose is to help you ignite CX celebration all year. Each episode, I meet with senior leaders from top brands as they share their story on how they recognize and lead the people and solutions that help their organizations to deliver a customer experience that separates their organization from others, so you can ignite your own CX celebration. And now, on to the show. Okay, CX Igniters, welcome to another fantastic episode of the Customer Service Weekly podcast brought to you by PACE, where we share a lot of customer experience and service insights from those who have been in the industry, those who are practicing in the industry, and some amazing people like Michael Pace. So Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, for those that don't know, I've actually known Michael for a little while, and I also interviewed him on my Fast Leader Show podcast where we talked about a couple other things. But today we're going to focus really in on Customer Service Week and the spirit of Customer Service Week and delivering an excellent customer experience and the things that go into that. But before we get started, Michael,
Sure.
you could share those who aren't familiar with you a little bit about you and your background and how it fits into what we're going to talk about today.
Sure. So I'm Michael Pace. I'm the Global Director of Member Services for Virgin Pulse, where we change lives for good. We provide software that helps people kind of cultivate healthy habits. I think most people think of things like step challenges and those kinds of things. And we administrate those types of programs for large corporate, companies, public entities, all over the world, actually. We're a B2B company, but I handle, and my team handles the C of the final B. So if you work for a large company, or you work for a company, I should say, and they've signed up with our program, if you have questions about technical questions or how the program works or how to get the most out of your rewards or what have you, I have a team of, a few hundred folks. I shouldn't say a few hundred, probably 250 folks or so, scattered all over the U.S. now because of COVID. And I got a big team in Tuzla, Bosnia as well. Before all this, I cut my teeth at Capital One for a number of years, fantastic company. Was at Constant Contact and built some really early social customer support strategies and implementations. Eventually started my own consultancy where if you've shopped at, David German or Tory Burch or Rue La La or Blue Nile, then you might have known, a little bit of my experience. And then a couple of years back, I should say, almost exactly 2 years, I moved over to Virgin Pulse and have really been incredibly happy.
Okay, so now it's also to add a little bit more context and depth to this. When you say Virgin Pulse, it's part of the overall Virgin brand of companies.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yes. So we're sort of the wellness end of things. There might be airlines and spaceships, and we help people with their wellness programs.
Okay, so I have to ask, because
Sure.
I've heard a lot of different stories in regards to, Sir Richard Branson and how he, sets up all of his different companies and how he wants them structured. And he talks so much about, culture and employee importance and engagement, all of those. I think it's vitally important there. So when I think about that overall Virgin global influence, could you tell us and give us a little bit of insight of, what comes from that you can leverage or that you use at Virgin Pulse?
Yeah. So, I say, great CX begins and almost ends with great EX, right? So, the customer experience starts and begins and ends, and then all the parts in the middle really are about the employee experience, right? Most folks in these roles, it's a tough role, whether it's, handling, customers who are unhappy or dissatisfied or have a problem or are living in our crazy world just in general right now. And, little things like this are piling up, and empathy has never been more important than today. But as if we can make the environment, their physical environment as healthy as possible, if we can make it, their learning environment, continuously growing. They're growing as people, they're growing as associates, they're growing as, people, most of them either, young careers or, settling into like a later life career. If we can make it a little bit easier and we can give them a vision, we can give them the right guardrails and let them empower themselves to do the right thing for people, and provide a little fun and provide a little game, and also provide the knowledge that we care about them. I mean, how far that goes. So any great CX begins and ends with EX.
Well, and so you and I, and this is one of my curses that I have to be really careful of. We had a really good discussion before we started this interview. I'm like, wait, let's stop right here to make sure that we get that on the interview.
Yeah.
And so you were talking a little bit about what many of us may be familiar with, and that's the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and how some of that focus has shifted now, versus than it's been before. And if you could, please start that discussion up again.
Sure. So as service leaders, this time is incredibly interesting, right? So let's go back to March or April for some folks, right? Normally if you think about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom is more about, food, air, shelter, safety type of things, right? And at top is a little bit more like self-affirmation and those kind of things. And typically that top of the pyramid is actually where we're in a normal environment, or whatever normal is anymore. But let's say even a year ago, the environment was more about, that self-affirmation, helping them kind of believe and help themselves, and, those kind of things. In March, it was about the safety of people, like the actual life and death of people, right? So I can remember sitting there, I think it was exactly March 12th, I believe. And we got the note, we're going to send, we're going to start working from home, basically immediately. And I think most of the folks on, this, the webinar, would understand that, you probably just can't pick up, shut your call center off, pick it up and bring it home, right? So we committed to have 100% of all of our agents at home, safe, within 2 days. We have to make sure they have the right equipment at home, and, monitors and this and that, and, a Thursday afternoon, type of thing. But I really felt like it was on me in the first time, if I didn't get these people home, and I had a lot of people out of Dallas. We're in the Northeast. Everyone knows the Northeast was, really crippled early on. To have a call center with, 70, 80 people, and you know what a call center environment's like, we have great desks, the new desks that stand up and move up and down and all this other kind of stuff, but they're not 6 feet apart. And, we're not going to be wearing masks and stuff like that as we're talking to people on the phone. So, and even then, we didn't even know anything about this virus at that point. And, I was worried if I didn't get people home quick enough, I could send this virus could run rampant through my center, right? And not only, could people be sick, but, at that point in time too, I mean, the mortality rate was, a bit higher than it is today. And, frankly, you'd have to be able to live with yourself to say, did I do everything I could to make sure that, Cindy got home fast enough, right? Or back into an environment where she could possibly protect herself more. And then, so you go from that to, can they actually function at home, right? Just pure function. And then it became, can we get to some level of productivity that is acceptable given the circumstances? Now we've gotten to I think now we're getting back to that point of, the safety and all the earlier components of the pyramid are there, but now you have to focus on their mental well-being, right? There's been periods of time where, if these, I have some people who are single right? Not married or not with another partner or something like that, and their family lives hundreds of miles away, like normal people, they could theoretically not see a physical person, when we were in strict lockdowns, right? So managing those kind of things, and then, getting back, even getting to that higher point of being able to deliver great service, those kind of things. I don't think if I had my wares, I would have loved to have customer service week probably about mid-June or something, right around then, when people were just like, I am exhausted. And we did some, I at one point I actually pulled my management team off, and I'm like, let me tell you my story. And like, this isn't as easy as it seems. And here are the things I'm struggling with. And we all talked about the things we were struggling with and how that sort of freed everybody a little bit from feeling like I'm not alone. It's the whole together, alone together type of thing. But it's a completely different world. And, what we're, when we talk about EX and CX, and, we are still working in a world where, you still do have to be concerned about more than just, more than what we used to a year ago. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and for me, I think one of the things that's important that you shared is, some of your own vulnerability and some transparency.
Yeah.
Because heck, I mean, for me, I've had my moments of struggle, and I have, a wife and 3 kids who've been essentially, here with me. And for those early days, it was locked down and we weren't going anywhere. But yet you still battle some of the, the lonely demon things. And here's the odd thing for me, I've been working remote for almost 20 years. So it's like, well, that side wasn't a blip to me, but it's all these other things that were going around. And it's like, and then plus 2, my kids had struggles. My wife was used to going into an office. And so you have all of those pressures and concerns.
Oh, I mean, we haven't even gotten into, if you look at the typical demographic of a contact center customer service environment, a lot of these, they don't have a lot of the financial means, that others have to, their kids are there, or they could be single parents, right? And, I don't know if any of you, if your kids are doing virtual schooling still or anything like that, but it is hard, right? I have a sophomore in high school, and it is, trying to keep up with, the 15 tools that they're sending things onto. And, of course, you're still trying to do your daily job. And we have one of the most, sort of demanding, kind of real-time jobs, always going on. So there's a lot of things you have to decide and make trade-offs on, and, how you're going to work in that environment. But it's still, in the end, a great EX will drive a great CX in the end, no matter what.
Not a doubt. And you had mentioned it before, and we definitely want to focus in on that is, the customer service week itself is hopefully an opportunity to focus in on something that will help to recharge a battery. And then for us leaders, we need to carry that spirit all throughout the year. But I'd love to hear how you guys celebrated this year.
Yeah, so this year, obviously, it was all virtual, as much as virtual as we could do it, right? So in years past, we've done, we still do the raffles, we still do the games. I think last year we brought in lunch 3 or 4 days a week. We did one, I think we did a dessert party a little later in the afternoon with some drinks and stuff like that too. I bought one on Amazon. You can buy like this wheel, you spin it. It's kind of like Wheel of Fortune type of thing. It's got a magic erase board on it. It is the world's best investment for a call center. It's like $30 and it's fantastic. And I also made breakfast for I cooked breakfast on site for everybody. We had pancakes and waffles and bacon and eggs and omelets and all kinds of other stuff. Tons of recognition, and you try to get the company recognition involved there too. This year we did more of the virtual type of thing. So it was more, virtual games. I think we had like people take like random super close-up pictures of things in their house, and people had to guess what they were. And we gave out like everything from kind of gift cards to extra PTO time to, extended lunch periods. Again, more just kind of the raffles and games and the bragging rights, type of stuff. And we did do, I think we did send lunch home to everybody, either more of a voucher sort of thing with one of the delivery companies, just to kind of show a little bit of appreciation. And we do it, we are theoretically, we kind of consider ourselves 3 sites. So I have my Tuzla Bosnia site and kind of let them run, and they have their own culture of things and such, and let them run with it. Providence, where our headquarters is, we kind of go down that path. And we used to have a site in Dallas. COVID kind of, ended up collapsing it, and they became our larger virtual team. We always had a little bit of a virtual team. It all sort of, those 3 groups sort of, kind of manage things, specifically based on site and stuff like that, although almost all of it was virtual.
Well, I think, that's probably, important to know that we'll probably be doing the same thing in 2021. I mean, it's yeah, right now we're talking about, we're sitting here, it's, November 6th as we record this, and this episode is going to be released, next week on November 12th is when we're going to release this particular episode, and that, cases are surging.
Yeah.
Places in Europe have gone back into lockdown. Talked to a friend in Ireland, they're in lockdown. Talked to another one in France, they're in lockdown. As we head in the upper hemispheres, going into our winter months, who knows that's going to bring, and coming out into spring, if that's going to change a whole lot. So
yeah,
it's for us, I think, an important point that, again, some of the discussion that we had prior, and what I said we had to make sure we bring in. You talked about something when you started referring to issues, whether they were systemic, I think is what you were referring to. But you had talked about when things happen, we essentially had to do like a triage.
Yeah. So
if you could explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So, and this, let's put it, the way I've talked about it with my team, and I've talked about it in a consulting manner with other companies, is in times of stress, whether for some reason your call volume has gone crazy, or things like COVID, and you're all of a sudden in business continuity modes, or what have you, stress presses on your weak points, right? Or your weak points become much more obvious, right? Whether it's, do you have a strong business continuity plan to start with, right? Like if you didn't, there's obviously, something right there. But think of this virtual world, right? Where just think of your processes, right? If you had processes that relied on, physical paper transfer or something like that, or, if your workforce management was so tight, right? Working from home, there's local internet issues. There's, does the company as a whole have the right bandwidth for VPNs and, all the other SaaS products you're running, and, if you have a CCAS system and your telephony is going through your same PC and stuff, right? So it's putting the stress on the processes. It's putting the stress on the technology. It's obviously putting stress on the people, right? And all, if there are opportunities in this kind of COVID thing, where, your opportunities are more clear than they've ever been, right? Like where in my process management are things weak? Where in my, connection with people or connection with the team is weak? Where is the, what are the break points of our technology, standpoints and such? So, I could say, after you get through, definitely triage, it was get people home and safe, and get people up and working, and get people being remotely close to as productive as they were in the office and stuff, right? I mean, that was the early triage, right? And then it becomes, how do we handle some of these things that we didn't really, you may have not have paid almost any attention to, but when the stress came down, it breaks things. We've had times where, I've been in lots of industries where, you have a technical failure, and all of a sudden, your contact center, what have you, becomes flooded, right? And you could start seeing where those stressors are. And sometimes it's really good to like talk to your agents and talk to your team about it, especially when you're in those really stressful type of things, right? To talk about, let's just talk about like these stressors that are coming out. And we haven't even talked about, the stressors on the people themselves so much, like your management team and stuff like that. My managers have to do a lot more daily working remotely than they did before, right? They don't have to commute, but before, if you wanted to, you could turn your back or turn your head or walk around the office and kind of see, who was busy, who wasn't, and what people were going. Now you're doing it virtually and you're trying to understand things, and I think we end up also doing a lot more communication digitally, right? And there's it's great we have all this digital technology way of talking and things like that, but also too, sometimes it's a lot easier for the intent and impact to be different, than just having a conversation with somebody. So there's a lot of things you got to work on, and working on digital communication, was something we really realized we needed to do and do more of, and things like that.
Well, I think, what you're referring to for me is a couple of things associated with competencies and skill development. And when you look at being a leader that's in proximity of my team, there's a certain set of skills that you need and competencies that you need, and you use those and you develop those. Well, when you're virtual, it's a different set. Well, some of them may totally work fine, cross-functional perspective when you think about those two competency sets. But there are some new things that we need to learn. How do I be, an effective, a virtual leader?
Yeah,
that's a different, set of.
It's very different, and the level of transparency sometimes is difficult, or making sure you're connected, right, is difficult. Apparently Siri thought I was talking to her. It gets tough.
Well, so for me, when I start thinking about the celebration, when I start thinking about how to carry that spirit, and ignite that CX celebration all year long, there's some things that you used to do that that not going to do that anymore. Some stand out for you?
Some things that we used to do, yeah. I mean, there's obviously things like how you think about training and those kinds of things. That's probably the biggest one. Just to be at the sort of the same time, COVID, I was thinking talking with another professional in our industry, and he was talking about the move is to all virtual training, no more classroom training, right? Like why take people and put them in an environment that's going to be different than their working environment, to kind of work. And I was actually already starting to go down the path of like all of training could be completely virtual. And it should be made to be done, at your workstation. At that time, we had workstations and desks and all those kinds of things, right? And the people around you would be the people around you when you were actually working, and they would be some set of new people like you and mentors and such who are physically next to you. A lot more training on demand, right? More resources and your learning management systems and things like that, where things could be refreshed. We purchased we purchased licenses for things like LinkedIn Learning, which have thousands of courses and stuff like that on it, right? Where they could take anything from Excel courses to better contact center agent or contact center management or marketing or IT, whatever it was, right? But giving them sort of the access to some of those type of things. was really important in terms of like the broader kind of learning and understanding. So you have to rethink, complete training, and new hire training, right? I mean, just new hire training as a whole, you're bringing people into your company and you are not, for some places, they will never see you. They may never see you, right? So how do you bring them in? How do you welcome them? How do you, make them feel like they're important, right? You can't put the things up on the bulletin board or, saying welcome new hire class and their pictures and all that kind of stuff. You got to do it virtually, right? And then you got to train them virtually. Then you got to be able to support them virtually and such, right? When they have questions, they can't just raise their hand or walk over to a supervisor, right? You have to be able to do all this stuff in a virtual environment, which requires strong knowledge bases, strong learning management systems, strong processes that are related to these types of things as well.
Now, I think you bring up a really important point. So for me, when we created the Call Center Coach Leadership Academy for frontline leaders and emerging leaders, we looked at that issue. And there's studies on, adult learning, and they talk about blended learning, and they talk about micro learning and on-demand learning, and they talk about peer learning, and that's what we implemented in the Call Center Coach Academy is all of those different modalities, because when you start especially thinking about something that is not a technical skill, something that's more, human development based, like leadership, you don't come out of that, virtual class or heck workshop for that matter, with a brand new magic wand that's going to have you spread magic. It's just
no,
not the way it works. Leadership development is a journey, and everybody's a different starting point and brings different, tools to the table. And you're right. I mean, looking at all of that in a different fashion is important, and also knowing. And here's one of the things that we forget as adults. And so what we do and what we implement are not the same. So, for example, peer learning. So more than 60% of what we learn is from peers. And so if we don't create an opportunity for peer learning to take place, we're missing out. So if we start talking about creativity and innovation, if your groups and visibility and perspectives is only in your four walls, guess what you get? The same old thing over and again. You got to get other perspectives. Some of the greatest inventions that have come out in the past, 5 years, they're not brand new. What they are is they're pieces of this, and this put together, modified a little bit, and now they become something different.
Right.
And so we have to give people that opportunity to be able to do that, especially if we're starting to talk about customer impact.
Yes. Yeah. It's great point. Fantastic point.
So, okay. So when I think about, this whole spirit and igniting, we've talked about triage, we've talked about prioritization, we've talked about some tools, we've talked about learning and development, we've talked about several things. But if you look at one thing that kind of stands out as a goal, knowing that we're looking into 2021 and having, essentially normality associated with this dispersion and remote, work life, what's one of the things that you'd like to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, I think on a super tactical level, we have a company-wide employee engagement survey coming up. Honestly, I hope we score well, because that means people are doing well and those kinds of things and such. But I am incredibly interested in kind of understanding, the virtual versus, the last time we did a full bore version, we were all, in the office, or, the old normal, right? So I'd like to, my goal would be at a minimum, our engagement scores, being relatively equal to what they were historically. It doesn't mean they need to be the same, right? It's okay if they're different, because it's all different. But, for me, I think my goal is going to be that. And then going into 21, it's maintaining that, engagement. You know, for we've had I think industry wide and kind of within the company, the member services of Virgin Pulse has had the highest. Whether you want to call it, ENPS or ECSAT or whatever the case is, for a number of years running, we're making, we've made a lot of incredible movement on, what they kind of list as leadership and listed as like kind of communications and those specific areas. I'm hoping we can maintain that. I'd like to, I think there's a good possibility. It's good possibility considering all the COVID and stuff. It could, possibly be worse. But if it's worse for the right, I don't want to say the right reasons, but if it's worse because, just people just can't be physically, having that physical connection to other people, not intimate, but like, physical, I can see someone right there. That to me will be the biggest goal. If I can go and, if I could sort of, have my historical benchmark, my new benchmark, and then, I can take, I can do all kinds of things in 21 to ensure that I'm kind of either, maintaining or improving that kind of benchmark. So that's, if I have a monster goal, that's my kind of monster goal is to keep 300 people enjoying what they're doing and, believing that, we're here to help people change their lives for good and keep that moving.
Well, I think for me that listening to you, that would be an awesome, realization of that goal, because there are studies that are showing that that whole employee engagement thing is plummeting for a lot of organizations because of some of the things we've already talked about. I went past the triage point. Now everybody's trying to settle in. They have all these other things going on, and the whole engagement piece is really suffering. So you talked about the whole, employee experience impacting the customer experience. You and I have been around long enough to know that the numbers are there. So there's no questioning it in our mind. The data exists. Whether or not people have found it yet is a different story. So then when I think about, carrying forth that customer service week spirit throughout the year, what do people need to do?
Yeah. So I think the one thing that people forget to do is budget for it, right? Like, I'm in budget season right now. There's a big old earmark for customer service week, right? Like, you could do it on a per person basis or just make sure the money's there. You could do it without money. It's a lot more fun with money, right? So, make sure that that's a part of things. I think, in terms of the early prep, I would also say, customer service week should be hopefully it's a reflection of your values, right? Whether it's your company values or you may even have departmental values, right? Or culture, right? Whichever you can call it, values or culture, what have you, right? But like a culture or sets of values that are articulated that enable you to carry it forward, right? Whether it's doing the right thing for the customer and being excellent to the company, for the company, or kind of continuously growing. We're, our kind of value, our values at Virgin Pulse, at where we are, kind of hungry, humble, and smart, right? And we're, trying to always kind of, kind of weave that into kind of what we're doing and such, right? And that becomes your, the earliest foundational stone of kind of your, what you're building. Then I think there's more this is also an interesting time. And if you ever read Chip Bell's books, one of those, he's a fantastic speaker as well. He talks about something called exercising responsible freedom. I love that, like, I could just plaster it everywhere. When people ask me what's my management style, and I tell them I do my best to help people exercise responsible freedom. And it's basically, one, it's exercising, so it's action, right? It's moving forward. We're always moving forward. Responsible meaning like you know what the right thing to do for the customers, you know what the right thing to do for the businesses, you know what the right kind of that type of balance type of thing. And then the freedom is to go and do it, right? So enabling that trust. Trust is such a interesting word, and everybody has their own sort of, it's like love. Everybody could have their own sort of definition of what trust is, or if you ask somebody what their definition of trust is, and they'll tell you, oh, it's something you earn. Well, it's not the definition of trust, right? Like it's just something. But in my world and in our team's world, it's about sincerity. It's about it's a sort of like a Venn diagram of sincerity, reliability, and competency. And we work on all. When we look at things that either we're not delegating, or why we're not delegating, or why people are not trusting people to do the right things, which one of those three things or a combination of those three things are off? And if you could identify them, you could focus on them. If it's competency, you could build that competency. If it's reliability, it's more of a focus on the results focus and the results orientation. Frankly, I have never solved for folks not being sincere and caring. That's usually kind of one of those things like, listen, this is the bucket you're in, and you have a choice of moving yourself out of it or not. But and that's always the hardest one to change. But kind of understanding those things. Empowering. I don't want to say empowering, because every time somebody says something like empowering, it's like I could press a button on the screen or I could touch you and give you my power to go do something. It doesn't work like that. As much as people say it, and I know what the intent of what they're saying is, that empowering somebody else, you can't do that. Only folks that only empower themselves. You can't empower others, but you can create the guardrails, the rules, the space to be trusting. You can provide that trust, right? You can help them understand the consequences of good and bad decisions, right? So understanding kind of like what to look out for and things like that, right? We work with adults. We're not babysitters. We're not mom and pops. We have plenty of that at home, right? These folks who work for us have mortgages and kids and insurance and all kinds of really grown up things, right? It's up to them to kind of understand. They more often than not, they strong associates know what the right thing to do is. Give them the tools, the feeling, the momentum to allow them to empower themselves to go forward. No, that's it's a little bit of a soapbox issue for me. So,
well, so you have a lot of passion behind it, and I love it. And also, Chip Bell is a senior contributor to the Customer Service Weekly, and you can find him at customerserviceweekly.org as well as chipbell.com. And he's just a fantastic person.
Yes.
Amazing person. Okay, but I think for me, when you start talking about that, I've also heard the same thing apply with motivation, meaning that hey, you don't motivate people; they motivate themselves. What you can do as a leader is create the environment and all of those other things that you talked about. So for me, I'm just as passionate about the whole, engagement and motivation. I don't want to say concept, but really competency.
I mean, it truly is a part of like broader leadership competencies. I think what is a good degree, it's like about getting the right people on the bus and then, all going in that same direction type of thing. And, going in that, everyone wanting to go in that same direction and pushing, forward is an important thing.
Well, and so speaking of that, there's a whole lot of people that all the time, they're in leader roles. Have been put in leader roles or had the opportunity to get leader roles to be able to improve the customer experience in contact centers and customer service. So if you were to give one piece of advice to those emerging leaders, what would it be?
One piece of advice. So I think, make sure I'm saying this well, like, the biggest piece of advice is, and especially in sort of the world of customer experience, is I think every service leader wants to deliver great service, right? And I think even in lots of ways, they can imagine how they could deliver it, right? And you listen to consultants or you read blogs and stuff on customer experience, or even some of these books and stuff, where it's like, do this, do this, do this, do this. And most of us don't live in this world of unconstrained, money, resources, time, risk management, right? So they're of sort of the, of the companies who do customer experience well, the very first thing that they do is understand what is most important to them, right? In terms of these things, right? And you have to make an overt choice to say quality of experience is more important than cost, time, and risk management, right? But you can't do that everywhere, right? I'll use financial services as an example. There are certain things in regards to risk management that, you'd love to give away the store, right? Type of thing, but you can't, either legally or for lots of reasons, right? So you have to understand your constraints. I think you have to understand where budget and stuff fits in. Every contact center leader in the world could do so many great things if they're, with these unlimited budgets, and, make all these extra callbacks or have more people on the line or whatever. And even the projects that you do, most of them require investment, right? And business cases and such. And sometimes those business cases come out to be, it'll be a better customer experience. Well, what does that dollar amount mean, right? Because you're asking the money from CEOs, all these kind of things. But, the best service organizations in the world, hopefully I can remember all 6 of these things, all of them have, sort of do these 6 things. The first thing they do is understand their priorities. The second thing they do is they have, strong culture, values, right? Those kind of things where it's internalized and within the organization. They are, they focus their beliefs through their associates, sort of the third one. They are organized around their core mission to, go forward. I know I'm missing one, but I know. And the last one is they're well marketed. So, there's a reason why Zappos and Nordstrom's and Ritz-Carlton, the stories of somebody being on the phone for 10 hours don't magically escape. They're well marketed, right? The old Nordstrom thing about a lady in tires or hubcaps and whatever, like, these are well marketed. They might be real, but they're well marketed, right? So, there's a lot of companies with really good service, right? Like really, really good. And, we experience this all the time in our life, right? But they're not great because no one else knows about them, and unless you market it. So there's probably like 17 tips in there, but like, I'd say, the first one is understand your priorities, understand, we live in a world of constraints, work with, understand your constraints and build around it. Not every company should have the greatest service in the world, right? It's okay. Go try reaching customer service at Google, right? So,
and yet look at their stock price. Look at
their stock price. I mean, like, Amazon's a different way. They went the opposite way with it and stuff like that, and they've done fantastic, and it's been great. And then lastly, like I said, I kind of mentioned this before, but every organization has every customer service CX organization has 4 strategic imperatives. I have not come across one that doesn't have these 4. It should be the basis of your core strategy every single time. It should be what you measure things by. So the first one is quality of experience. I think that's what most folks measure. I mean, this could be everything from your CSAT and your NPS and maybe your average speed of answer and all these other kind of things, right? Second is your cost, scale, and flexibility. What are the core metrics that define your cost? Is it cost per customer? Is it cost per contact? Is it contact per order in the e-commerce industry? Like, what are the core scale metrics that really drive your business? People. If people are the most important asset you have, you better manage and measure that. And then the fourth bucket, I call well managed. This is everything from how well you're managing your projects to your daily discipline to your risk and all your risk management stuff, right? I don't care what industry you're in, you will have risk management type of things, but even at a minimum, you should be having a dashboard, and that dashboard should be, created every month or week or whatever time frame you're working in. But being disciplined and well managed is incredibly important as you go to make your 2021 strategy. There's 4 imperatives. You have make up some imperative about your quality experience, how you're going to scale and the cost and flexibility of your business, your people, and then how well managed you are.
Michael Pace, goodness, man, I tell you, you have dropped so many nuggets of insight in this episode. Okay, CX Igniters, if you're not sharing this particular episode and commenting, that would be a sin, because he has unloaded a whole lot of wealth for the holiday season that you need to spread. Okay, so Michael, I've had a great time with you. How can the CX Igniters get in touch with you?
Easiest way is LinkedIn. I think everybody should have a LinkedIn profile and keep it as their personal Rolodex. I also have a website, thepaceofservice.com. I have nothing to do with the PACE organization, but anytime I've had the opportunity to speak at it, I'll claim the organization as my own. But yes.
Well, and as everybody knows, the Customer Service Weekly podcast and EPUB is powered by the PACE Association. So thank you very much for participating, Michael Pace.
Thank you.
But all pun intended.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, Michael. We wish you the very best.
Great. Love to be back anytime. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Customer Service Weekly podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe, follow, and share the Customer Service Weekly podcast and register for a free membership at customerserviceweekly.org to get the latest updates on how you can help ignite the CX spirit everywhere.